A person who thinks all the time has nothing to think about except thoughts. So, he loses touch with reality and lives in a world of illusions. By thoughts, I mean specifically chatter in the skull, perpetual and compulsive repetition of words, of reckoning and calculating. I'm not saying that thinking is bad. Like everything else, is useful in moderation. A good servant, but a bad master. And all so-called civilized peoples have increasingly become crazy and self-destructive because through excessive thinking they have lost touch with reality. That's to say, we confuse science with the real world.
But know inside of you that the real you that's inside has been around forever and will be around forever. That is all potential, that is all love and all light, that is nothing and everything simultaneously, and is meant to be here and chose to be here experiencing this experience. And this year, as I've been reading just late last night, wow, just some stuff I was just reading about the way, I don't even believe in Nostradamus stuff, but it just hit me in a very strong way. I looked at 4 or 5 different sources, not mainstream, but other people who, the way they'd deciphered his cipher, should we say, and it's just absolutely mind-blowing. It's going to be a year of huge change, a huge shift in consciousness, in power, evolution. We're going to rise up. We're going to jump another rung on the ladder. We're going to start tapping into our empathy and connect with people correctly and start on the path of how we're supposed to be, how we really are, and drop all of the charade. And yeah, I think there's going to be a bit of calamity around. Some of it I think will be real, some may be feigned, and some may be orchestrated. But there's some really beautiful things coming this year. It's going to be a tempestuous and turbulent year, and trying for people who have not ever reflected. But we have been learning to surf the wave of this world, of this experience called life, and all our training is going to be needed, is going to be used this year. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say. I wanted to keep it brief and short. Love, light. Oh, and please answer on our table, if you can, about the New Year's resolutions. I kind of felt like to kind of start a bit of dialogue of earnestness, of someone saying, hey, I tried to give up buying hamsters. I don't know. give up smoking crack. I don't know. I tried to give up my OCD or whatever it was. But I failed here and I failed there, or I've succeeded with this, just for us to start that conversation. Anyway, talk soon. Ciao, bellissima.
I've not seen her in 4 years, but we leave these little voice messages to one another. We call them pod chats.
Yeah.
Where it's such a great skill. It was just such an amazing experience with her, and we still do it 4 years later. And she channels me all the time, and I channel her, and she just sends things at the moment where I'm like, you just feel like you just need something, and she gets it. And then even a couple days ago, she sent a couple things. She's like, I just had a feeling to send these 3 messages to you, and she sent them, and I was like, it's exactly what I need to hear. She's like one of my biggest cheerleaders, and from that moment, like when we met, like I think I tell you about these people that have come into my life, and they believed in me in a way that I was like, well, I really believe in them. So if they're believing in me, I really need to tap into that. But she literally was like the third kick in the ass. And she's like, wake the fuck up, Ashley. You have love, light, and energy within you. You need to share this with the world. She just really opened up my mind and my heart, my soul. She's just so like, her husband and her are very much the same. They are super connected souls. They're a blessing. But that's like, she's just such a gift. But a lot of the things she says are very much like you. Your perspectives, and she sent me a message a few weeks ago and she wanted me to ask you something, but I have to go back and listen to it again and ask you. But she said she has a question for you. And part of when she sent that this morning and then like on the way here, like what was coming through for me was just the significance and the importance of community and connection. And spending time with the girls yesterday, it's just like this organic high. Just to be around people that are like-minded, that are wanting to expand you and explore and just be curious with. It was just, and the humor, like laughter is so important. We laughed our asses off yesterday at this restaurant, the four of us, and it was just serendipitous sisterhood. And we were just so thankful to like be together and know each other and how we all came to know each other and how different everyone is. But then yet there's so much love and respect and no judgment at all. Like no matter what we talked about, it's a safe space. There's such value in that. And we were completely authentic. 4 bottles of Prosecco later. It was so much fun. So I just can't even imagine not having those what if you want to use the word tribe, I like it. I like the word tribe, but it's just amazing. I mean, people just need to have connection.
Fundamentally agree with that last sentiment. You came in here with some good life force today. These are people that are in resonance with us. They are able to access the same things that we are accessing. You said you had a high when you were sitting down with your friends at dinner while laughing. I mean, it's no coincidence that we talked last week about how when you hit a vibration, your people come and they surround you, right? As you raise your vibration, you are achieving different resonances that reach different people. If you look at a pond and you skip a stone, every time that stone hits a certain height of water, right? It's bouncing off that height of water. And what happens is they create simultaneous ripples at that level, right? So as we are at different vibrations, we are rippling out and sending these signals out to everybody at that resonance. And it's a beautiful thing when a bunch of stones are thrown in the same place. There's this collision. The ripple is bigger and the waves are bigger, which is a higher vibration. I think just on the thread that Francesca left us, talking about alignment and starting to recognize symbols around you and patterns around you, right? These, on the microcosm, these symbols and synchronicities and patterns that we experience are the hieroglyphs that are painting the walls in the tunnel that is our path.
It's talking to us. It's telling us. It's so much information. And on the way here, aside from, I normally listen to podcasts, and I said today I'm going to have my earbuds in. Again, it's a defense mechanism so people don't talk to me. But I just was like, I'm just going to actually listen and be more aware. Because when you are listening to something in your ears, you're involved in that. And then when you're actually not, I was more of a witness to, I saw like a lot of purple on the way here too. It's random purple stuff that was like these flowers were happening to just be there. They weren't even in the ground. They were somehow out of the ground, and there was no other purple flowers around. So I saw a lot of purple on the way here today. I was just trying to be more witness to the nature, and from like the weather, the amount of how much it changed from Friday to today, I think is amazing. I love it. Somebody was like, oh, and the weather was so nasty, and I was like, but it's not nasty. It's nature. It's supposed to be like this. We have no control over it.
Another thing that Francesca felt that she wanted to send your way was a big shift that's going on in 2024. I'm curious what your thoughts and sentiments are there.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to go back, because she's not only have you mentioned that a few times in your sharing, but she has as well. And so I have asked her to dig in a little bit more to explain what she's very connected to herself, first of all, and just the universe in general, and like whatever information comes through her. What I found, my first response would be, this past January has been, and I just told her, my response to her was just this actually. I said, I feel like this month has been, like it's been half a year already. I just feel like it's been, not like in a bad or good way, because there is no good or bad, but in this intensity of, I don't know, like each day feels so, I don't remember the words I used, because it wasn't, it just feels intense. It just feels like because of the intensity of the people I've met, where I'm at in my own soul, where I'm at in my own journey. And I just, like in a good way, I feel like this month has just been action-packed, right? And so I know there's a shift. I know I can sense this shift within me for sure, from all the things that I've been doing and enduring, and in a good way. But I'm not a fan of the word hope, but I'm hopeful that the message that she's conveying and the message that you're conveying is an actual. But one thing she said was so important, which I do think it will contribute to the shifting of consciousness, is our gifts, the gifts that we have, and how that the world needs them. So that's why we're doing what we do, and believing in ourselves, continuing to do the inward work. We can always talk about that, whatever that means, and working on the self and staying connected to the self, loving the self. We're role models, I believe, for other people out there. Again, that's a ripple effect too. We might not even know it's 10 people away from like somebody that you knew, that I know and you know. It doesn't have to lead back to me, but whatever we're putting out there, that light, love, and energy that we're putting out there is a ripple effect for other people. So that is the shift that I believe we can be a part of that this year. So I thought that was important that she said that. Her love, light, and energy is, she wants to share it, and she does. She shares it in multiple ways. Mm-hmm. No, it's powerful, the revelations that she makes, and when we talk. We have 4 years worth of chat on Telegram. Gosh, I should go back and listen to the beginning and see what types of shifts we've had ourselves. But I'm curious to hear if you to answer your own question, your perspective on answering your own question, if you're up for it.
Yeah, of course. And this is definitely not to discount anything that Francesca says whatsoever. But I think there are a lot of people who are saying that there's going to be a consciousness ascension and shift taking place in 2024, where we need to go through some type of chaos in order to get there. Since that is something that's coming through the mouths of so many people who have so much reach, that is incepting that concept and that reality into the collective consciousness of the people of humanity, right? And it's not about where people are getting the information from, if it's coming from within them or if they're just repeating people to discuss this phenomenon that's occurring. It's going to occur because it's reached a point where it's being communicated. So it's not even about the efficacy or where she's reading this information or where she's getting it. It's that this is the information of the time. Mm-hmm. And so what will follow is exactly that, right? If everyone started flying around you, you're going to believe in your own abilities to fly, right? And that's going to continue to happen throughout society. So whether it's a malevolent force or a benevolent force that are incepting these ideas into the collective consciousness, they are going to help translate in through our reality. And the thing that I think is more important than being wary of this consciousness shift is truly, again, the simple answer of going inward. Because if you are trying to tap into your own divine nature, the shortest path is not listening to what people are saying is going to be the harmony in the universe. The shortest path is being in coherence with yourself, because then you don't have to worry about what's to come. You are truly acting in alignment, and you will be taking the undulations of the cycles of nature. So people putting these ideas and planting these ideas into the collective consciousness, it's not a bad thing, but the question is, are we always going to be anxious about what's to come, or are we going to stand on 2 feet, and are we going to surf the waves like she's talking about, right? And we can't surf if we've never been on a surfboard before, right? So we have to make sure that we know how to shred, right?
Yes.
And I think so that's my 2 cents. If that is the divine course of nature, if these are the waves that we want to be riding, teach people how to surf and don't project yourself onto the big waves.
That's right. Yeah. That's a good point. So in some ways that's, I guess you could use the term then, role model for that. I'm trying to think of something else better.
And she sounds like an incredibly beautiful person. So I don't want to take anything away.
By the way, she would rather you give her another perspective, right? And to like talk it out and talk it through. She's so open-minded. Yeah. But yeah, she's a beautiful soul. And she's always up for, she's very philosophical as well. Like she just is so in touch with, like you are. She's like well-read, but in a way that information that we want to read, that we want to fuel our souls with, to learn from. I mean, the Stoics, the Emerson, and who else did you mention earlier? I mean, we're still reading these people that have been around for hundreds of years. It's pretty fascinating. And I definitely didn't appreciate them until now, like being an adult. But that's okay. It comes when it comes.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these people wrote things because they knew that there would be the information of the time, right? Of the time that the information was supposed to come out. It's the same reason we're creating a tangible form of the conversations we have now. They might not only be meaningful now, they might be meaningful in the future. That was the sentiment I threw on Threads that you were asking me about, right? The sentiment that I was leaving there was, there is a certain time when people need certain information, and that's when it enters their field. We can be receiving any kind of information at all times, and honestly, the answers that we're looking for could be staring at our face, yelling at us, right? We have to get to a certain place in order for us to be able to receive them. And the sentiment there was almost like a satire in the way I outlined the thread, because I was like, here's the answer to the nature of the universe. It follows on to say, like, I can't teach it to you. Yeah. It has to be something that we learn from within. It has to be something that we learn from within. So the Stoics, all these people who you are now receiving information from, as you progress on this evolutionary journey that you're experiencing as Ashley, you are encountering exactly what you need at that time. And so people who say they might not have access to that, right? That information, the context of your life, your perspective is receiving exactly what it needs in order to get to where it needs to go. And it's the difference between recognizing that or being aloof to it.
No, that's spot on. And I would say if people are navigating other people and they're wanting to teach them, I would say that's probably more the ego, your own ego wanting to teach somebody something in order for them to be in alignment with you. But you can't force alignment with another person. If you're just talking about two people or up people, you can only focus on the self and do the inward work. And then that you'll be less affected by people not necessarily on your wavelength. Why are we forcing people to be on our wavelength when they're not meant to be there? Or maybe they'll be there when they're ready. That's the whole point of what you wrote. I think from like a psychological or coaching aspect, working with people, it's giving them that tool of saying, when you're ready, you're ready. When they're ready, they're ready. And if there is that divide, that gap, whatever is there, it's like, what's the, not don't lower yourself in order for them to match you, but that's true.
Closing the gap.
Closing the gap, but you stay where you are and keep growing, and it's up to them to get to you, I think, from my perspective. Whether that's something you want. So say if it's a friendship, I mean, you're hopeful that this person can close the gap.
Yeah.
But don't stop your growth because of somebody else. Like you continue on that path and that growth, and you be you.
Right. No, I totally agree with that. The sentiment of closing the gap, sent out as a transmission by Snoop Doggy Dogg to A$AP Rocky. If you want to watch the YouTube video. Yeah, you sent it to me. I love it. It's just a simple way to communicate that sentiment, but it hits hard because it's the truth. I would say the best teacher is an exemplification of the law. It's not a communication, right? And I've become quite clear that I will be a communicator of patterns and truth to help people go inward and figure out who they are. That being said, there needs to be an element of exemplification of who's saying that. Yeah. And for some, they'll hear it in my voice, and they'll see it in my presence, and see the clarity of who I am, just that simply. But for others, they need a little bit more of a flaunt and a shiny object to do that. Yeah. So the subsidiary of my purpose is the exemplification that is more shiny. And it's not necessarily to say I have to be a billionaire, but what I am doing is I'm creating something that's tangential to the communication of that truth. And that all becomes much more clear. But I think to go back into this conversation of the journey, this wave, right? This cycle is these returning feats that we have. It's like, until we recognize we are on the journey, everything is happenstance. Yeah. Life is better, right? We do feel disharmonious when we don't actively know that we are on the path. Otherwise, we are reactive because we think something else and greater is controlling us. Within the harmony, it becomes a relationship with life. And that's exactly what we wanted to do all along, right? That's exactly why we're here. The benefit of that can only be experienced once you embark on that path yourself. Miracles will not happen to you if you don't believe in miracles. God will not exist if you don't believe in God. Having powers will not come to you if you don't believe in powers. So I encourage everyone to find these things from within and not to listen to me. But ultimately, I will communicate that they have worked beautifully.
We talked, when we regrouped on Friday, we talked about that inward journey. And part of the mentorship program that I did was closing the gap, but closing the gap within me. Because within that gap is your subconscious telling you, you can't do this. You're not able to do that. And, we all have those little niggling, limiting beliefs that we've been programmed with, or whatever word you want to use, they're just in there. And not only do we tell ourselves that, we're making that gap even bigger. We're just disconnecting your mind and your body. So closing that gap within you is that also for me would be that inward journey.
Yeah, and when it comes to this removal of attachments and the inward journey and the programming, right? The fundamental thing that one needs to do is realize what programming came from the outside world versus what programming is essentially true to them. So when you want clarity of what's coming from where, that's why I use the patterns of nature, right? Because there's a lot of signals out there that can be confusing. They can cast you astray. And if you want to understand what signals from the outside world are reflections of truth that exists within you, you can balance your inner being with what's outside, right? It's not necessarily important, really, what if the outer world impacts us or if the inner world impacts us. But what is important is knowing what is true. And that's why I use nature from the outside.
Yeah.
And then the removal of attachments on the inside, because then you can actually listen.
Do you have an example of an attachment?
Ideas,
Yeah.
belief systems, creeds.
Mm-hmm.
If anyone is telling you something from the past and telling you that it is who you are, then don't listen.
Mm-mm.
Because that is not the nature of things.
That's
right.
Yeah. No, I agree with you.
I'm trying to be more and more impeccable with my words because I realize that any misstep can cause confusion. I should almost make our preface of every episode, we are doing you an injustice by putting words in your ears.
That's right.
The
I agree with that sentiment. That's right. Disclaimer. That's our disclaimer.
Yeah. That being said,
thank you for listening. And keep
these ideas are transient, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what is eternal is what we're trying to remember. Look to poetry for beauty. Look to philosophers for truth. And poets want beauty that is true, and philosophers want truth that is beauty.
Did you make that up, or
that's Emerson?
Okay, I was like, because every now and then you come up with something, and it's very much your sense.
That was Emerson. I just heard that this morning. And, yeah.
Do you have a photographic memory?
No, why?
You remember a lot of good things.
Well, I fundamentally believe that I remember exactly what needs to be heard.
Mm-hmm.
And since I'm doing what I need to be doing, I have no fear of scarcity of information.
Mm-hmm.
My dad asked me, don't throw out all your gold so early before you guys even have a production. And I'm like, if I am doing what I'm supposed to be doing, there is no shortage of information that's going to come through me.
That's right.
And that's a fact, right? I had a little bit of anxiety of preparing before each one of our episodes, but then I came to realize that if I really am doing what I'm supposed to be doing, everything that comes through me is exactly what the world needs to hear. And that's my agreement with the self. The second that becomes scarce is the second I'll shut up. I'll send you the login for the podcast editing, and I'll be on my way.
Okay.
Yeah.
That gives me anxiety. Don't do that.
That's the same as for you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. If you feel like you're doing something that's not serving you, doing a disservice, then there's the shift, and then you figure out what that is. But I'm not sure what the conversation is with your dad, but he's...
That's an anecdote.
Okay.
Tiny one.
But if he did say that, whatever he said, it was more like, I found that to be encouraging, like keep going and doing whatever you're doing because it's working now. It feels good for you now. There's alignment.
Yeah.
I don't know.
He came from a good place.
Yeah, it sounds like
he was just saying that jokingly.
No, I think I actually found that as like I'm not sure exactly what you were talking about with him, but and it's interesting. There is this level of nervous and excitement before every episode as well for me. But that's we should feel that when we're doing something, especially something that's new. If we're doing something and it's mundane and you don't love it, then you're doing a disservice to yourself. So it has to be exciting. It has to be a little bit nervous.
Well, think about the actual mechanisms at bay, right? We're the ones who judge whether these feelings are good or bad, but they're changing our physiology in order to achieve a certain resonance that gives us access to certain information that needs to come through us.
Yeah.
So we were talking about how we achieve resonance with people we love, and then we can connect with them and have these experiences. We can also achieve certain resonances that have access to certain information. What's happening in the collective consciousness, right, is a higher vibration. Our vibration is raising so that we can achieve, access more information. And it's a chicken and the egg on if it's because someone communicated it or if that's actually happening and someone received that and channeled it through. But whether or not that's the case is irrelevant. What is relevant is the fact that there are certain stimuli in our life that put us in a place where we can have a certain conversation. An example of this is when during our You Are Love episode, right? When I had another Satori moment, I was communicating that human beings are love, doing everything they possibly can to find themselves throughout the episode.
Yeah.
But towards the end, it hit me in a way that was unencumbered, right? That was eternal, that was true, and beautiful. But the point is, right before that, the moment preceding that, I was trying to give my 5-year-old child, as an example, a sentiment, like a single sentiment on what life is about, as if it were the last thing I could say to them. And I go into this like wannabe astrophysicist example for what reality is, forgetting that who I was talking to, and you very funny, like humorously pointed out, like, I don't think they're gonna understand. And we go on and we laugh, right?
Yeah.
And then after we laugh, we raise our vibration.
Yeah.
And then immediately following that, I say, okay, let me try again. And I come to the you are love epiphany and just leave it there. But it's not about the words, it's about what came from that and where I was at the time where I arrived at that, right? So when we actually change our vibratory nature, everything we experience and everything that comes through us exists at that resonance, if that makes sense.
It does, yeah. No, I love your. So I learned the word Satori because of you, and read about it and researched it and did a little Instagram thing on it. And so when you use that word, it means for you. Does it mean like an awakening, an enlightenment, an epiphany?
Sudden enlightenment is the
meaning.
Is the meaning.
Yeah. For people who don't know that word, because I just heard about it through you for the first time, and I was like, but that's a cool word.
It's beautiful.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's a beautiful word.
And I read a lot about it, like the spiritual meaning and digging in. So I thought it was good to explain what that means for you. But yeah, that was a pretty cool moment. The revelations that you had, and you could like tell in that moment.
It was there, but it wasn't in my verbal lexicon. I didn't have the words that I wanted to stab with, right? I didn't have the precise words, and they're very simple words where they're gonna go over a lot of fields, right? It can be missed because it sounds very cliche, but anything more than that misses the point. So to be incredibly explicit in the event that maybe one person will feel this is going back to the fact that a lot of the things that we do in our behavior is to be loved by someone else, right? And we forget that we are beings that are infinitely capable of loving, right? And so in our pursuit of things from the outer world, we forget who we are, right? And that's why I say we have to remove our attachments from everything outside that we think we love and we think are fueling our love, because it is the essence of who we are, right? And so by acting in love and giving love, we are being our natures. This is our nature.
Yeah.
And that is what we're here to experience and remember.
It's like a little thing I sent you over the weekend. I don't know if you got a chance to watch it. The guy who is sitting on the edge of his bed saying how grateful he was that he is alive, basically. None of this external stuff. But he was thankful for the abundance he had around him, a nice bed to sleep on, like he recognized, of course, but that doesn't make him, that's not who he is. Doesn't, just because he has those things doesn't mean he's not, he's, the love comes from within him. And it's...
There was I did watch it. There was a scene where there was a short or a TikTok or something like that. There was a scene where he was, you see his mirror, and he wrote down these affirmations, and then as he was brushing his teeth, he kept reciting these affirmations. Someone I was talking to and having another conversation with was saying, I'm trying all these things to tap into my spiritual nature, but they're not coming to me. I'm I'm writing down in my meditation journal, I'm meditating every day, but I'm still disconnected. And this reminds me of a sentiment that I think is important to express, which is when we create an overimportance around an act or a routine or a process, balancing forces are going to overcompensate, right? We're removing our own individuated power and assigning it onto something else, and we are depleting ourselves from the nature of our being. So, overimportance on waking up and reading your affirmations, overimportance on the routine of your diet, overimportance on your meditation schedule, is you subconsciously telling yourself that you need these things in order to be a certain thing, right? So the actual feat here is to achieve resonance, and then your resonance is where you know you are truly in the proper conception of self, because anything else can be an exacerbated ego, or it can be overly modest and you're missing the beauty of who you are. So that's just something that comes to mind when I saw that video that you sent me.
Yeah, and I thought the ending was super cute because we do
It was
talk about
cute. It was a cute video, sure.
Only because it reminded me of one of our past podcasts where you're like, looking at yourself in the mirror, showing your guns, and I was like, yeah, and then you blow yourself a kiss. And
when I say guns, I mean 2 handguns. I'm not flexing.
Are you sure? Because I picture you flexing.
Some days I do. Just to make sure.
This.
Just to make sure. Still there? Okay.
What? I mean, my boys do all the time. They're flexing, literally flexing. Sebastian likes to compare his to mine. But no, I thought it was cute at the end because he was like, say I love you 10 times. And I tried it. I got to 5, but I started laughing at myself, and I was like, that was fun. Like, I need to start doing that, saying I love you, but like looking myself in the eye in the mirror. So I did. I was working on. I did 5,
with that
and I started
too,
giggling.
Another thing that comes to mind is when it comes to like programming something subconsciously, it needs to be felt as well, right? So when you're bullshitting yourself by repeating things in a circle, you know it, and it's important to really feel it. It goes with the meditation as well. It goes with even things you read. You can actually digest information when you're meditating on the things you read. That's what the hidden codes are in all of the things that are stories, right? The Shakespearean stories, all of Homer's work, the Aeneid, all of these stories are actually encryptions of codes that if you meditate on it, you will access the information that's actually supposed to be read. Everyone has their own perspective, but that is what we are, right? So when you go in, take a crime scene. A crime happens, there are bystanders. Someone takes a report of everything that everybody else saw at that crime scene. It's all going to be a little bit different from every perspective. So they have to take the sum of every perspective, the all of every perspective. So what we have to do is recognize that our perspective is exactly the information we need to be coherent with the resonance of the all.
That's well said.
Yeah.
One of the things that this is like I think it's a not completely different tangent, but one of the things I talked about on Thursday with the shift chicks. We talked about shift chicks.
Well, I think I like that more than shift girls.
I know, I might have to change the name of our chat. Shift chicks.
I haven't said chicks in a while. That's a good one. I'm going to start saying chicks more often.
I love the word chick. People get offended. I was like, I think it's adorable. I love chicks. I'm a chick.
I call my guys my dogs. It's worse than a bird, right? Like,
I don't know that you can call them chicks, though. You can call them dogs. That's pretty badass.
Then they would say bitches and then get mad.
That doesn't bother me either.
I wouldn't.
Because I am a bitch. My kids try to get away with saying it. Like, oh, mommy, it's a female dog. I was like, whatever. As long as you're not directing it at me, I can call myself one. So the shift chicks, we were talking about, I guess, some of like non-negotiables and things that, and it can be like, part of that just came from me because journaling, meditating, exercise, whatever those things are for me are part of what nourishes me every day and what makes me connect. The main thing is, I said, my non-negotiable is connection to myself. Like, no, it's, and all the things that I do help me, support me in that journey of self-connection. And that's closing the gap. And there's no right or wrong. It's my process. It's my inward journey. It's so powerful to have that self-awareness and self-connection. And so, yeah, that was my response to them was that inward journey.
Receive that fully. Like the thing that I was attempting to communicate is not that these are incredibly amazing tools that we get to have. It's that if we over rely on anything external, then we're missing the point. Mm-hmm. The person that I was talking with who said they were having a tough time tapping in, they're doing all these things.
Okay.
My advice, my recommendation is just to stop. That reminds that person that they have the power, right? That everything is within them. And thinking and latching on to these ideas, these attachments, these things that we think we need as crutches in order to be whole, that is exactly the opposite of what these tools are actually meant to achieve. So recognize that there's a polarity in everything, right? They can be used as crutches, but they can also be used as tools. Mm-hmm. They can be weapons, but they can also be, tools. So,
I was like, what's he going to say?
Yeah, they can be weapons, but they can also be supplements, right?
I think that's such, if you want to use the word advice, such great advice for somebody, actually. I'm going to use that, even for myself, where it's just stop. You're right. That's a form of meditation. It's just meditate on the actual being there, being present. I don't necessarily know who you're talking about, but it's just like, take a breath. Just be. It will just, because all the stimulation, overthinking, it's very powerful. And by the way, I definitely was a chick who went down a rabbit hole a lot, especially in the last year. And there's always information though, going dark and deep. Don't get me wrong, I love it. Now I love it. I didn't then. I felt like this is never coming out of this hole. I'm so triggered, and I wasn't blaming, but it was like this is hard. And then I think I had my own satori when I was there, when I was in that, like literally I can picture myself in the darkness and the cold and sitting on my bathroom floor, and I'm like, okay, Ashley, this is temporary. You're going to come out of this. Whatever's there, go deeper, feel it. Fucking cry it out, whatever you need to do, because it's not going to go anywhere. It's just going to continue to resurface for me, to be triggered again by certain memories, certain thoughts, certain whatever. And it's just so powerful to actually go dark.
Yeah, we are light. We can't express ourselves unless we are enlightening the forms that surround us. If a chick goes down a rabbit hole, it's going to get eaten. You reminded me of another sentiment from that same conversation, because I did vocalize some of the spiritual experiences I've had, and the reason for that was only to paint the picture that there is something much grander that you can experience. The specific experiences aren't things that I'd want to project onto anybody else. That person, in their pursuit for what it means to be spiritual, was saying, I don't know what my past lives are. I don't see these amazing, profound fractal worlds. I don't communicate with God. I don't talk to angels. And we have to remember that whether it's information that we need to achieve a resonance in order to digest and understand and receive, or if it's experiences we have, they need to belong to us, right? There's a materialization that exists in the spiritual communications as well, where they're like, well, I manifested this, or I spoke to him or her, or this deity came and channeled me. These are a bastardization of the powers that you have. So by being a teacher, by being vocal about this this experience that is incredibly imperative to who we truly are. We have to realize that we can disillusion people by saying this is the process, right? It's not, being a spiritual teacher is not telling people what the stages look like. This is the same way government incepts ideas into the masses, and then that's the experience that we think we're supposed to endure. It's continuing on, actually with malice. It's harming people because they think their spiritual journey needs to look a certain way. And that's why I don't want to communicate that. I don't want to confuse people. That was an early episode for me where I was first being verbal about this stuff. But after really, really digging deep, I think the important thing to know throughout this journey is to remember that you are the power of everything. You are controlling everything. And so the limitations of you not being that are actually accurate because you are not that. You are experiencing your own divinity, your own separation, your own creation. So the way this happens and what it looks like can't be compared to anything that exists in this outside world. So remember that as you stand in your power and you're not attached by any of these practices that you think make you whole. You sit there, you go inward, and you let it come out of you. In the morning they say, rise and shine.
Yeah.
Rise and shine. And that's it.
I haven't thought about it that way. Yep. Especially we have this gift of life, so rise up, shine. Whatever, that energy, that light. It's actually really good advice in the morning. I think I'm going to start saying that as an affirmation. Rise and shine, Ashley.
Think about the word mourning too. Like mourning is like to mourn the death of the past and into the future. So it's like good morning. It's kind of, it feels weird.
Yeah, it does actually.
Right? And I don't know how I feel about it. I don't know how I feel about it.
I'm pretty sure I said, what did I say to you? I said happy Monday this morning. I didn't say happy Monday.
Yeah.
Okay, Mondays can be really hard for people because your weekend comes to an end, but I love my Mondays now. This is fantastic. But yeah, I mean, dates are important. Dates are important for people, and I get that. Dates remind you of, a memory of a child's born. Or I was, my own birthday. Thinking about I actually, people don't know me well enough. I love my birthday. I talk about it all the time. I celebrate it multiple times as much as, because I do believe in celebration of life.
Multiple times a year?
Yes, multiple times within the month of August. It's not just one day, it's like a month of celebrations. And actually,
everyone should be celebrating.
Everyone should be celebrating, especially my birthday.
Yeah, your birthday.
Very important. Yeah. But it is a celebration. And so people are like, when people actually say I hate my birthday, I'm like, why? What does that mean? If you weren't birthed, you wouldn't be here right now. Like, what a blessing that you're here. We should celebrate life when people transition. I just think that we should. And that's a sentiment that I love around the birthdays and all people's birthdays. And then I was just thinking to myself as you were talking, like, why is that date so important? And I guess at some level, it tells us how old, like it's a chronological age. Like we need to know how we, biologically, need to know how old we are, I guess. But then I don't resonate with my age, which you make jokes about when I make jokes about it, because it's about how I feel and defy like the whole like society is like, oh, you're 48 and you should be doing all of these things as a 48-year-old woman, mom, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, fuck that, defy all that. Like, I've been told before, certain things like, oh, women at that age shouldn't have long hair and they shouldn't be going out partying with their girlfriends and they shouldn't be going on vacation without their husbands. And I was like, who says all that shit? Just because I'm 48 does not mean I have to act 48 because that's what society tells me to do. That's the individuation of me. I'll just be myself. This is where I'm at this time in my life, and I'm loving it. And then, next year I'll be 49. I'll be 50 next year. It's like I can't wait. It'll be so fun. It'll be exciting. That'll be a celebration. Let's go to Ibiza, everybody. So So I guess in some ways we have to have that timeline. There's that word. It's almost like, that's why I feel like January, even though it's been 1 month in of 2024, I just feel like it's just been this powerful time, this powerful moment of my life that I've been going through this last month.
Yeah, and to be clear, I only poke fun at your age because I recognize it's a vulnerability of yours, and so we're gonna get rid of that.
You think it's a vulnerability?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because you say it lightheartedly, but you keep saying it, so it's in there. I will say, when it comes to the calendar, when it comes to using dates, when it comes to using time, and things like that, you said we have to, right? True. Society has to. But society is a wave. Society is a wave, right? So when you get a collective, that is when it operates in a wave. You are your own wave within that, if you do achieve some level of coherence. So if you want to operate in harmony with society, with the greater macrocosm, obviously you have to oblige, right? Just because you say that, no, I'm like, I'm resolute in my being, I am beyond this, the waves are still gonna go in the ocean. It's not to negate the constructs that we have, right? It's a judgment to say that they were imposed on us or not. We are here evolving this way for a reason, whether it's malevolent forces who want to be the beneficiaries of the patterns or not. It's just looking at things objectively, right? It's not trying to judge everything as being created for a good or bad cause. The advent of COVID-19, the emergence of artificial intelligence, it's like separate yourself from judging it as something that's going to cause chaos or order, and recognize what it's doing throughout society. Using dates is something that we can use as a tool because it's something that's here. Same way Emerson can be used as a tool because it's something that's here. But we recognize that everything has a polarity. Everything has a polarity in this world that we experience. It's interesting.
Who was the person you brought up last time? And I looked him up, and he was talking a lot about polarity, probably because you were talking about polarity, not just a Kabbalion, but...
His name's John DeMartini.
Yes, DeMartini.
Dr. John DeMartini.
First of all, yeah, his last name's awesome.
Yeah, in the last episode, I didn't
Yeah.
keep his name in it, so I'm glad you brought that up, because I just said, I mentioned someone because it was before we press record. But he
down here. Yeah.
he talks a lot about the sentiment we left about your values, right, and what your inner value is, right, and measuring that at the spectrum of self-esteem, high self-esteem, low self-esteem. Dr. DeMartini blew my mind in an interview I saw with him because he was so well read, and he was so aligned with purpose, which is something he communicates. Yes. And so you see this vitality in a 69-year-old man who looks like he's 40. And he's a spitting image of what he's communicating, and it's beautiful to watch. We have different paths, right? I mean, I think for me, he is a perfect teacher of this world, of this universe that we experience. So from like a very human perspective, how can I practically, tangibly understand and navigate my relationships, my cause, have direction? He is an endless resource. Yeah. He has a bunch of YouTube videos. He has on everything about life. So definitely, one of the things that inspired him in his path was, I didn't dive too deep into him or read his books, but one of the things that inspired him was someone who came his way when he was a kid, and he had this shift when he was about 17, and that person was talking about universal laws. So in the context of universal laws, he dove into things like polarity to give people context for what's going on here.
No, I've listened to a part of his podcast, and the information I was like, whoa, I need to actually sit down and really focus on what he's saying, because it's so packed with amazing information. No, I'm super excited to dive into him. He
was the part of my path that directed me to Emerson. And it was funny because when he was talking, I fell in love with his work, and then I realized where mine deviates from his work. I realized the distinction, right? Because I was like, oh, he's already done everything. But it was almost like a resolve, because it's like, I don't have to do all this now, right? So then that led me to Emerson, and the epiphany of I don't have to do his work, I do my own work, led me to a book from Emerson called Self-Reliance, right? And it's funny, and the truth there. And then I remembered, as I was reading Self-Reliance by Emerson, I need to be self-reliant and not take all of this as fact, and I need nature as my guide. Then the next book that comes up from Emerson is Nature. Right, and it's funny how the synchronicities continue in this way.
The next book is Nature?
The next one I read, yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. So when he says self-reliant, what does he mean by that?
This is essentially what we talk about by going inward, right? This is a realization that it's just sovereignty. It really is sovereignty, and this is when we talk about unlocking your genius, right? Something exists inside of you only when you are in coherence. And you're not going to achieve coherence by being a copy of anybody else. Right. Genius is authentic, it's original, and it is channeling from that alternative space that we talk about. So the core essence of self-reliance is like, if I was to muddy up a sentence from it, right, you have to be an individuated self. That's very Carl Jungian, individuation from the plural. But I also found in that all the qualities that where I deviate from the likes of Emerson.
And that's part of the inward journey, and I know that I was wanting you to explain from your perspective, and I think we've probably covered a lot of it today, but this the inward journey. And if somebody was to ask you what that means, I think you responded basically saying, well, if they're already asking and they've already started their journey. Did you say something like that? Does that make sense? Like if you talk about your journey or your path or going inward, if someone's actually curious and asks, then they've already started. Like from my perspective, the curiosity is there. They want to know. The journey's already started for them. And it's like, that's I said, you're aware. When I say to them, your awareness is the start. That's you're ready. So go, do it in your own way, at your own pace. Because the moment someone is curious, my answers are my answers. You'll figure out what your answers are to that. But I do commend people and celebrate their curiosity of wanting to know what that is like and what that means. Even if they're skeptical, they're still curious. Yeah.
You're curious for a reason. Right, and you're meant to be in that moment. There was another interview I watched recently with, I can't remember the gentleman's name, but he was on Robert.
You don't have a photographic memory? He was,
yeah. I remember everything I could see. I just don't remember. But it was a beautiful conversation, because there was this man who studied medicine. And he was talking about how he took the evolution from being very natural science, right, like very logos, like brain, right, very left brain oriented to opening up to the divine. But he feels in his core that the spiritual truth world exists, but he just knows that he's unable to access it. And you see the melancholy on his face, on the beauty, but missing out on the connection to the oneness, right? And in the context of what you kind of just laid out of the curiosity, right? The curiosity of the journey. If I were to go communicate to this man what perspective shift could potentially help get him right there, I would say, who do you think, or where do you think that inkling is coming from? That is your communication with the divine. And so that would completely change the perspective on that, right? It's that is how you are communicating with that feeling. So your feeling of missing something and knowing it's there is a communication, and you're telling yourself that you need fireworks. And then when you realize that, you're able to bring it in and love it for what it is. And love it that you have the ability to experience that. And so I would say the same goes for an inward curiosity. If you're curious of this thing, there's something bigger that's compelling you to follow that path. And it can manifest in so many different ways. That's why I'm not really going to go down the path of talking about what my spiritual experiences look like. It's how do we begin those footsteps on our own, because the language is going to be different for everybody. The journey is going to look different for everybody. And so going inward is removing ourselves from the things that are told to us, that things, the way things are supposed to be, and recognizing that once we can be silent from the external influences, we become creators. We become the communicators. We develop that relationship with something much bigger.
I just got goosebumps. That's awesome. Yeah. And on a, I guess, a different scale or another scale, when I talk to people about, like, if they will ask me the question about meditation or journaling, my response is generally, well, it's whatever resonates with you. You make it your own. You can have a book and a pen like I do. I have 18 of them because that's how I communicate with myself and others, and I write it down. That's what's so powerful for me. But then and I said taking a walk in nature for me is a form of meditation. It's a non-negotiable. Like, I want to be outside. I want to feel. I want to be, and just to take a walk with a friend, that's a meditation. That's a form of meditation for me. And when I share that with them, I literally will see like a light bulb go off in their face, and they're just like, "Oh, really?" I said, "Yeah, it's really, really whatever you want it to be. You create that, and what resonates and what is meaningful, and also if you don't do it every day, have that compassion," which is something I said on the pod chat with Francesca. People who are not staying within their intentions every day, that's okay too, because there's something else you've done during the day that was intentional, multiple things. You rose and you shined. But just to give people, so what I think you're offering is another perspective, and that would be super enlightening to hear. Like, I'm super enlightened by that message of like, yes, that's exactly right. You're already asking the questions, you're already communicating with yourself, your intuition is talking to you. So tap into that. The heart, go to the heart and the love, not the logical brain, because that will stop the messages from coming for you. I love that advice. Yeah,
it's a blossoming, right? These are things that were there all along that we just shut off and we discount, right? We didn't see them for what they were, right? And when we're in the moments of flow, right, when we're getting the chills from something that invigorates us, these are things that you can water, right? These are things that you can water. That feeling that gentleman had about feeling like he lost something, right? That is an embrace. It is not a separation. You are embraced with that feeling. Going back to the conversation of the things that are temporal versus the things that are eternal. If you want to have that connection, you recognize that embrace is part of the eternal. That feeling that comes from within is part of the eternal. Everything else you're looking at goes through the cycle of birth and death and rebirth and death and our connection inwardly will remind us that it's eternal. And that's why I advocate for that, and that's also why that's what I think the world needs right now. There's so much information, and now we're on the precipice of a time when the information, we can't trust the source it came from anymore because of AI, because of deep fakes, because of all this stuff. So what's going to happen is we're not going to be able to trust any information that's being disclosed to us unless it's happening in physical reality, right? Quote unquote physical reality. And what that's going to do is that's going to encourage everyone to go inward and start to develop a language with their intuition. And when they develop a language with their intuition, they are doing the journey.
Mm-hmm.
But while this transmission is reaching people before the advent of this, before this event, I think it's important to also recognize that when that chaotic world occurs, it's only a pattern that's helping people, humanity, do the processes that they're meant to do. It's not malice. It's not, we can't look at it as evil, because again, we have to hold both polarities at once and recognize the world for what it is. This is part of our evolution. And so, since I see that coming, I feel very coherent and confident in communicating that it's time to go inward. It's time to listen. It's time to trust that. And that's why I leave that sentiment, and I appreciate you asking the question. I think you planted that there in a beautiful time where it really matters. I saw tears coming to your eyes a little bit when I said that, and I think if I was to speculate, it's because that conflict might be a little bit of something that might be juggling in your head. It's like I can feel it, but I haven't quite touched it. And so I want to just leave you with a sentiment for what it's worth. There's a movie called Silence. I think it's Scorsese, and it's these people who go out on this journey, and there's a scene in the movie where the man is yelling, saying, "Why can't I hear you?" Essentially, why can't I hear you? Right, and the emotion, right, of yelling and waving your fist at God. Where do you think this comes from?
Yeah.
Right, and so these embraces that are your experience, we have looked outwardly, waiting for things to happen when they are you, and that's another part of the epiphany. Like, you feel the you are love from within, right? It's remembering not that someone else has to fill your cup, it's that you are the tea. You are the tea, right? And so I want you to know that your nature, everything you do and everything you experience is exactly what you are looking for. And you are looking outwardly for it when it is you. I just want you to remember that, because there is no separation in reality.
And for further clarification, what the world needs now is connection to the self and to go inward.
We're here to remember who we are, right? It's the separation from oneness to experience the other, but then ultimately remember that all we are and all there is love.
So the journey itself, to know who we are, is the most exciting thing. That's I believe. And to be the individual self and the discovery of and the creating of your purpose, and you've stated, I feel like you've had your Satori moment when you came to your purpose, and purpose came to you over these last few weeks. I mean, it's always been there, and you've been able to voice it even again today. It's so exciting and it just expands from there and grows, and but I feel like that's as dark and as hard and challenging and whatever you want to call it. That's what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be all of those things, but really, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
To be the individual, to work out who I am and work through who I am, and it's amazing. It's an amazing journey. So yeah, I definitely get emotional when I talk about the journey, and I want it for everybody else too. All I can do is keep doing my thing. But I want that. It's so powerful to want this for other people too. If that is the pursuit, there's that song, Pursuit of Happiness. It's not the pursuit of happiness, it's a pursuit of self. And within that, the love and acceptance and understanding and knowing, curiosity, it's not even values anymore. It's just, that's the way of life, especially for me. And be connected to that.
You know, the truth of it, right, is satirical. It is satirical, right? We're looking for what we were all along, right? We go on this big chase for who we are. But in doing that, if we recognize the cycle that we take, we realize that no matter what our journey looks like, or how we do it, or where we constantly are, every choice is the right choice. Every journey is the right choice.
Mm-hmm.
And there's peace in that.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of peace in that.
As St. Augustine said, to climb up through my mind towards you who are constant above me, I will pass beyond that power of mind which is called memory. If memory means the story by which I define myself, that's a lot to let go of. How many of us are really prepared for such a radical surrender?